you are. I think we have to see if Gilles is here.
Yes, I am.
You are here. Okay, great. Okay, so let me change my view on my screen here because I can't see it. Let me shift this over. Okay. Okay, we're gonna share screen here in a second. Let me share, and you can tell me if you are all seeing this. Are we good? We are good.
Can't speak for anyone else, but I can see it.
Yep.
Okay, great. All right. Well, thank you, everyone. Thanks, Rich and John, for picking up, allowing us to do this, and putting us in this the last event of the formal schedule here. I think it's well placed in that our goal is to try and have you leave here with some ideas and some thoughts, things to think about, and plant some seeds maybe. So let me move this forward. Okay. We keep hearing, these comments about radio dying and there's nothing to listen to. We're concerned about what the future holds. Sometimes it gets a little frustrating to hear these things. So there are a lot of things going on out there that are going on that we'd like to tell you about, and some things that some of you are already involved in. So we keep hearing these statements and we think it's time to turn things around. We've been working hard to address the challenge. We're going to suggest some of these ideas to make what we do interesting for newcomers and for us old guys as well, seasoned veterans, with a wide variety of tools, vehicles, and other things. Why are we here this weekend? It's all part of it. We think we know. We love radio. We believe radio is important. We want radio to survive. We want to learn more. We need more people to feel the way that we do. And 35 years of Winterfest and people keep coming. There's probably something to all of this. Let's hope so. So I bring this up to people who ask me, what we do. What is all this radio stuff you do? And, I mentioned radio clubs and what have you. And they say, well, what's a club? Like, what's a club that listens to radio? And I always tell them, millions of people out there that own cameras, but how many bother to join a photography club? It's kind of the same with radio. Millions around the planet own them, listen to them. How many choose to join what we do in radio clubs? How many of them even know it exists? A very small percentage. So this is our plan today. Gilles and I have been working on a bunch of stuff. Some of you know what it is, some of you may not. So we look at what we do. We look at how what we do has changed, continues to change. We'll present you with the ways and means to make ourselves better known, to provide you with ideas, suggestions, and challenges to bridge the gap between the radio hobbyist and the radio listener, and to hopefully repopulate our group. To leave here today, we'd like you to have a positive attitude, believing that there is a future for what we do. Some of you probably already do, and otherwise we probably wouldn't be here. So that is the challenge that we're going to put out. By the time we're through here today, we hope that you'll see that it's up to us to reach out, share our knowledge and our enjoyment of what we do. So we'll talk about a couple of things that are ongoing and that we'd like to, others to be doing at the same time. You probably know we're both, Gilles and I are both CIDX members. Our club has been around since 1962. It's one of many clubs that were out there. There's not as many as there used to be. Nonprofit, volunteer, staffed organization. Most of you know what those are all about. We've been around since 62. We're Canadian, but we're open to everybody. Anybody is welcome. And we publish a monthly newsletter like many of the other clubs do. However, 2 years ago at Winterfest, we got a bunch of our column editors together and we made a long discussed and well thought out change in the way we do things. Not that we went electronic, we've been doing that since 2005, but we wanted to sort of change our approach to what we were doing for our club members. We added a bunch of new columns. We had a bunch of new members coming into our group. And I'll explain how that happened. And well, actually, Gilles will explain that because he's the one person who's probably been the most responsible for it. But what we wanted to do was to, with new people in particular coming into a club, we wanted to try to serve them better and help them grow. So we started putting things in that were looking forward and putting out challenges to our members to get them involved in other things. And part of that we're able to do by being a general coverage club. We cover just about everything as long as it's radio related. So we added things like a radio basics column, something we didn't have. Brian Penny is doing that column for us. It's going back to square one, where we were at square one, and hopefully helping people along the way to learn as they go through their experience with our radio hobby. We added a utilities column back in recently because there's less shortwave. Yeah, we know that, but there's still a lot in that HF spectrum. A lot of it that we don't understand. We don't know what it is. People are going to stumble across things. So we put utilities in there. We've got pirate stuff in there. We want to put some different stuff, our program, DX program guides to help them listen to those types of shows. We put in a column called Not Just Listening. That means it's radio, but it's different. It's reading books. It's watching videos, watching YouTube stuff, films, actual films relating to radio, old documentaries. It's things that we sit down and learn from. Uncle Skip surfaced again. He used to do our ham column. He's doing book reviews for us now. A very extensive ham radio column. Not many clubs combine ham in with it. And we put lots of news and information and notes and program previews, things for people to go out and start listening to. So again, pushing people forward to try to do more things, get more out of their radios, get more out of their radio experience. Oops, sorry. I got to go back. I can't see my arrow. There it is. Sorry. So one thing we started doing, we use Zoom technology. We have monthly club meetings online. Right now, they're only open to club members. We send out the invitations. We do it once a month. We started a Facebook group. We started an IO group. One other thing we decided to do, we got a brand new website, and we are promoting all of the other clubs on there. This is not a competition. This is joining together, working together, and we want our members to know about all of the rest of the clubs out there. So you see the medium wave clubs, IRCA, NRC, you see NASWA. We mentioned the Winterfest on there, long wave, TV, FM DXing, regional group, Michigan area DXers. We should have the BADX guys on there. We haven't done that yet. European DX Council, we're not keeping it to North America. The two ham radio organizations in North America, RAC, ARRL. This is all on our website. So people come to us, we can send them to other groups like some of you are members of already. So I'm going to turn this over to Gilles, and he's been doing a lot of things to introduce and finding new people out there. Gilles, you can tell us about some of your activities.
So it all started with YouTube and an idea of, yeah, that YouTube thing looks interesting. And in 2012, I decided, okay, let's do a channel about something, but what should I talk about? And talking about something on YouTube means, well, you better choose a subject you already know well and something you love. And it started by my own little channel, a couple of subscribers, not a lot of views. It seemed to be my own little thing until things started to grow. And there more and more people were joining and seemed interested and were commenting. And then I'd added content. I'd added, purchasing radios to talk about them and what's on the bands. tuning. It's part of a logging at the same time. Sometimes I post videos of what I was listening to, and more people were interested. And we got to a point where something happened where somebody suggested, have you ever thought of doing some live show of some sort that would talk about radio? And, it never came to my mind at the time. And I was like, do I really want to be live with people watching me over the internet doing this? And I started with the first one, which was very basic. It was done in my kitchen. I had my Icon, my CRD 500 on the top of my dryer, and very, very simple, bad camera, everything to make sure that people won't watch again, because it's just, you look at the first one and you're like, well, that was bad. And nope, people are just continuing, and they're like, this was a lot of fun. For the first time, not only do I have radio interest, I have radio interest with somebody that's talking about it live, might be tuning live stations, pirates. I can actually do it at the same time as others. This is brand new. This is something that I never had done before. And it grew into a pretty big channel, from what I think is the biggest shortwave radio related channel on YouTube, pretty much, at 33,400 subscribers. And, I'm getting close to 9 million views now, which is a lot of people watching stuff about shortwave. And you start thinking, well, shortwave cannot be dead. There's just too many people interested in watching and interacting. And it became, my live shows became kind of the center point of my channel. And my idea behind this is, let's not only promote shortwave, let's have as many people join in. And we talk about it as a solitary hobby all the time. Well, the thing is, this is where you don't feel alone. This is where you are sharing with others. This is where you feel part of someone. We talk about the club like the CIDX, like NASWA. What happens there is fun. It's fun. You're part of something, but it's still a little far off, because unless there's some event like this, like a yearly event, in general, it's still everybody pretty much in their own little home doing stuff, in their basement with their radios. And sometimes they'll have the Zoom meetings like the CIDX does every month. Here, 2 times a week, we gather, we talk about radio for a few hours, 2, 3, sometimes more, depending on, the content and what you have to talk about. Brings people together. And suddenly you're not alone. You're sharing with others. If you're a little shy, you don't have to participate, but you're still here. You're still with other people that love the same thing that you do, which is radio. And those that like to interact, there's the chat room, they interact, we have questions. And there's one big positive point in my channel. It is to make sure that if you are new to the hobby, you're not going to be pushed aside. You're not going to be the one that feels that you're not welcome. Because we don't care if you have one radio and it costs $20. We don't care if you have a $10,000 transceiver. It's not important. That's no importance at all here. What's important is you as a radio fan want to participate, want to listen, want to be here, and want to actually be part and feel welcome in what we do. Over years, how many times we've heard of, grumpy hams and people that are like, experienced DXers that, unless you got that that $1,000 receiver, I don't think you can DX much. Well, I can tell you one thing. I can prove you, and from the videos on my channel, I'll show you that a $60 radio will DX the world, and you'll be amazed at what it can do, because it's never been the best time. Like, it's the best time in the world right now. It's never been so cheap to get into the hobby. We used to, in the 80s, if you wanted a good radio, it was quite expensive. If you didn't have a lot of money, you were kind of out of the game. Today, you don't have to have a lot of money to get a great radio, because the technology is advanced to a point where the electronics is really cost effective. So you got tons of beautiful receivers, great receivers. Everybody can join in now. Everybody can be there. And we actually are together in this. And it is fun because a lot of people on my channel are newcomers. There's people that are 18, 20, 22 years old. You'd never think that in 2022, young people would be interested in this. You know, it's like you look at the internet and the smartphones and all of that, and you're like, how can someone be interested in radio? You know, we talk about how it's an old technology. Well, I'm getting young people interested in radio. They're getting here, they're buying their first radios, you know, with the recommendations that I have. And what happens is they are amazed. They'll turn that on and it's like, wow, I'm hearing a signal from another country. And this is what it's all about. Let's have fun. Let's show to everyone what we can do. And you think shortwave is dying? Well, you should have watched my live show last week when propagation was amazing. And we started just, even I was back into my teenage years with amazement, hearing the Philippines and hearing all these signals from Asia. And it's like, everybody was like, oh, wow, this is so cool. Hey, I'm hearing Radio Thailand for the first time in my life. Well, you know what? We got excited and this is what it is. And I'm getting all excited just talking about it. So
Gilles, if I can cut in for a second.
yes, please.
The one thing that's been the most amazing, and I guess Gilles and I found each other going back a few years now, and I wasn't aware that he was doing this, but at the time when we met up, CIDX was, you know, the new members were not coming. It was kind of quiet. We had dropped all the way down to about just a little under 100 members. I think it was around 90 or so. And, you know, you start to look at that and say, wow, you know, we put a lot of work into this bulletin and, you know, is it 90 for 90 people? You know, we are now predominantly because of Gilles' work, I think, and a couple other things we've been doing. We're now over 200 members again. And many of those people are these people that have come into shortwave as brand newcomers, buying their first radio, as Gilles said, looking for help, looking for, you know, some people that can help them get something out of these radios. It's really coming back to basics though with those people. We have to start from square one, take them by the hand, guide them along, help them. Gilles does demonstrations online. You can see just, Gilles, how many videos have you got on this channel?
So more than 6,000 at the last count, 6,150 or ish. So that's a lot of work, a lot of videos going back, of course, to 2012. And right. We've expanded over time. We have radio reviews. We talk about what's up there. We talk about the new technologies coming, and it's growing. More and more videos every week.
All right, so that's the whole YouTube exercise. Of course, we talked about the International Radio Report. That show we've been doing in Montreal since 1987. Every week since 1987. We have a Facebook group with over 700 people on board. All of our shows are archived there, and Gilles set up a YouTube channel where we store the shows so people can go and listen to them again. This is something, you know, when we met up with Gilles, he came in and we needed a new co-host, and he came into the show as well. So we're now able, because of COVID, you know, you saw it this weekend, how we pre-record shows, edit them, get them up and make them available to people, particularly through the new YouTube channel. So people who stumble onto it, even, they're not necessarily looking for us and find us. You know, it might sort of pique the interest in what it is that we're doing. So yeah, it takes some dedication to go and do this every week, but you take it on, and there's some things you want to do, you know, to help people and to support what it is that you enjoy doing. So these are the kind of things, a couple of the things that are going on right now. When we were doing publicity, for the Winterfest. And I do this every year, and we try to get as many people aware of this as possible. I love Facebook. Lots of people criticize Facebook. There's a lot of garbage on Facebook, but there's a lot of really interesting stuff. I went through and did searches on Facebook and found these groups. And I only pulled groups that are active, and I only pulled groups that have over 500 members in them. These are all groups related to what we do. The total membership of all of these groups is 103,000 people. Now, yes, there are duplicates. People who are members of several of these clubs, hard to sort that out. But let's just take that number. Let's say 100,000 people out there. You look through these groups, and there's many names of many different people from many different places. We don't know who most of these people are, but they've taken the time to join groups like this, exchange information. They're listening to radio, whether it's long wave, short wave, FM, TV, whatever, utilities. All of these groups are out there. Go to Facebook, type in the word shortwave, type in the word DX, and these groups will come up. You'll see what sort of activity is going on. People at all different levels. They needed to know about organized groups, maybe. They need to know about Winterfest. They need to know about radio clubs. A lot of them don't. So at least we know that we've put out messages about Winterfest to all of these groups. And whether we get people from it or not, I don't know. We're trying to monitor that this weekend to see if we've attracted new people to the Winterfest because of this. But I don't think we can ignore this many people out there who are doing what we do at all different levels. Gilles, you want to talk about the receivers and what we can do with them a little bit?
Yep. So today, okay, we have modern technology. We have available to us a wide variety of radios, from inexpensive, Radiwell R108 and XH Data D808 portables that start at 50, 60, 70-ish US dollars, up to, of course, higher end receivers like, the Sangean ATS 909X2 and the Texan H501X portables. Great portables are available to us today with single sideband, with capabilities that we could not find unless you paid really high prices back in the days when I started, that today are easy for everybody to get. Radios that have precision in their display and frequencies, where you can tune to the 10 hertz precision on a little portable, which we would never have thought of, and it would have cost like a fortune back in the 80s to do the same. And great models that are available now. Unfortunately, we have to say, corner street store with radios. Yeah, we used to do that. We used to go to a Radio Shack and you get out with a radio. Today, it's a little more on the internet. You'll purchase maybe your radios, but you've got some great stuff at great prices that can help you get into the hobby. They are sensitive, very stable. They have features that are interesting thanks to some of the DSP technology, including multiple bandwidths. And it is just a pleasure to play around with all of these today. But you can't, you don't have to be stuck into just one aspect. We used to be desktop receivers, portable receivers. You choose what you want. Some were analog, some were digital displays. Today, you also have the possibility of doing things like SDRs. We have new categories of radios today. SDRs like the SDR Play RSPDX, the entry-level RTL SDR V3, which not expensive if you want to just try it. HairSpy HF Plus Discovery adds a brand new world of radio listening. Not only are you listening, you're also seeing, you're also visualizing spectrum, which means not only are you listening to something, you're also visualizing what's around it. You can see a little signal pop up somewhere, something you would have missed on a regular radio because you don't know what's happening outside of that frequency you're tuned to, and discover new signals. And that's one of the things I find fascinating with SDRs. I don't know how many signals I found because I could see it pop up on a display while I'm listening to something else. Now, a lot of people have the impression, well, I don't want to watch a screen for listening to Radio Romania. You don't have to watch that screen to listen to Radio Romania. You put Radio Romania on and act as a standard radio and just listen to it while doing something else. But you can also watch the screen and see other signals around it and do so many more things like, spectrum recording. You can go to bed, wake up in the morning, and you took a big chunk of the spectrum, and you can go through all of that data and see what signals popped up during the night while you were asleep. There's a lot of that interesting new technology that helps. Also, noise, big problem today. The noise is probably the number one enemy of shortwave. It's not the internet. I'm tired of people saying, oh, the internet's killing the hobby. It's like, no, it's not. Please stop. What's killing the hobby, the number one thing is the noise around us. And we've got some amazingly inexpensive things today, like the MLA30 loop that I talk about. I don't know how many people came back to me and said, you know what, you saved my hobby. I couldn't hear anything with a long wire because the noise was just too high around me. I got an MLA30 and suddenly shortwave is alive again. In some cases, this could be something that's going to help you out because finally you'll be able to hear what was in the noise. Magnetic loops are great, and could be something else in an MLA30 because we're not necessarily advertising that one particularly, but it's the one I use and I know it works well. And it eliminates part of the noise. It's not a miracle antenna. In a low noise environment, you don't need something like that. A wire works great, but in a high noise environment, or if you live in an apartment, you just can't set up anything big. You can't put 100 feet of wire in the backyard. MLA30 is small, it fits on your balcony. It could just fit. Some people are actually DXing with the MLA30 just in the window in their apartment. And that is something inexpensive that might actually bring back the hobby that you lost because of the noise. I got to say, before I got the MLA30, I was here listening. I was doing my videos, noise increasing all the time. It gets rough. You get to a point where you have to think, what am I going to do now? I am losing my capabilities of listening, and I'm doing videos telling people to listen to it when I'm actually starting to get, into the negative side of the hobby where, yeah, it's just noise, got the MLA30. And suddenly signals that I couldn't hear are there again. And that is also something that is cool, is you can do things like buy an antenna like that or build one. Some people can, just build loops to bring back the hobby. But also more than that, what I'll say to people, because that's one of the comments I hear quite a lot, is I don't hear anything. I see your videos and I don't even hear half of what you're posting. And I live in a big city. Well, I live in a big city. I'm in the middle of Montreal. I can tell you, this is not an easy place. But sometimes the hobby might mean you going outside of your home. For some of us, unfortunately, long time ago, we could be in our favorite chair in the living room, little radio telescopic, we'd get the world, it was cool. Today, you might get more noise than the world if you do that. That means, why not make it a fun experience of, it's a beautiful day out there. I'm going to go to the park. I'm going to go, for a picnic. I'm going to go enjoy a beautiful day and enjoy radio at the same time in a place or a spot where there's less noise. You can do that, enjoy the experience, and bring your portable with you. And you'll be amazed. The lower noise, the higher the number of stations you get. Typical ETM scan. ETM is a feature of some of the radios today, which is easy tuning mode. And it's kind of a cool feature because it scans the international broadcast bands. And it's actually going to register in memory all the channels that it actually received. And you might do a scan like that, and it's going to say, at home, I'm getting 14 stations. Then you go to the park, 10 minutes away, 5 minutes away from you. do the same scan, and suddenly you're at 45 or 50 signals. Why is that? Because you're going somewhere where the noise level is lower. So you have to be more proactive today. You might need, if you want to enjoy it, you might need to, unfortunately, for some of us, take a walk. And a lot of people that I see in my channel actually are like, you know what? I went to the park. I went to hike. I went to, I went camping and I brought the radio with me. It's like, oh, wow. It's like another world. It's full of signals suddenly. So it shows you there are signals out there, a lot of them, a lot more than we think. Unfortunately, we have to, understand that if it's not the case, it might be, and it possibly is, the high noise level around you. Diversify your listening also.
Okay.
That's very important to have your radio listening
Yep.
in
Gilles, I'm going to
aspects. Yep.
Okay, we're going to move on to the next section because time is going quickly, unfortunately. But we want to take the next step and then get to some of our conclusions down the road as well. But basically, to sum that up, these are new people. They're buying this equipment. They're running into some difficulty to begin with. Gilles introduced me to an MLA 30. I mean, I got all kinds of radios and stuff here, but I couldn't hear anything. The noise was unbearable. I put this up in like 20 minutes and I was getting signals that I hadn't heard in months, even years sometimes. So there's some simple solutions, and things like this are helping newcomers. So let's move forward here. And we'll run through this, if you can run through it fairly quickly, but this ties into other things that people can do now. And now we're getting into maybe people that are a little more experienced as well, and trying to expand the things that you're listening to. But pretty much keeping it in the HF spectrum, but using new tools, new types of signals, and using inexpensive or even free tools to help you do that.
Yep, there are signals out there that aren't just necessarily voice and something that you'll understand. There's some digital signals out there. And we have all sorts of tools to have fun and have different aspects, a different view of the hobby. Software like FLDG for decoding multiple types of digital modes in the amateur radio bands, but also outside of it. There are interesting things like, Navtex marine transmissions. There's still quite a few of them. I heard Argentina L2C a couple of days ago. SSTV slow scan television, lots of fun getting pictures over the air. Not just AM radio today, it's also quite popular with pirate radio stations sending pictures, while, that often are also kind of QSLs at the same time for some of the pirates. So these software are free.
Oops.
And are great. Apps.
Sorry.
Apps for smartphones also are available. So at the top also you see another PC, multi-PSK, which is a more professional decoder. It has professional modes. This one is free for the standard modes. It will have a paid license if you want to use the professional modes, but it adds even more capabilities of what you can decode on the shortwave spectrum. Apps for smartphones. Today, we're in a world where we're shifting. Maybe the use of a PC isn't as popular anymore. You got an iPad, got an iPhone, got an Android phone or tablet. Well, you've got apps. You have the Slow Scan TV app, for example, here by Black Cat Systems for slow scan decoding on an iPhone, an iPad. Works great. You'll have apps like the HF Weather app for fax decoding for Android, decode weather charts, satellite pictures. And once again, you have these apps available. What's cool about not using a PC and using an app for a phone or a tablet is, you can actually just put the device, your phone or your tablet, close to the radio speaker, not even have to hook it up with a wire. If it's, quiet, you're going to be able to decode makes it easy, because sometimes on the PC it's tricky. People have to use virtual cable software to kind of set that up, and it gets to a point where you don't really understand. On a smartphone, just put your phone next to the radio, start the app, and a lot of them are very automatic. They'll just detect the signal and immediately start decoding. But Android and iPhones have all sorts of software available. Here's Android with Robot 36, which is also a slow scan TV image decoder. Works great. And it lets you use your devices to decode pictures off the shortwave spectrum. Of course, there's the SDRs we were talking earlier, like the SDR Play RSPDX, the HF, AirSpy HF Plus Discovery, SDR console, for example. This is an example of what it looks like when you control a radio. A lot of people have the impression an SDR is something hooked to the internet. No, a SDR that you own, like an AirSpy HF Plus or RSPDX, is an actual radio. It's a little box though, because what's missing is the controls. The controls, this is the software that you see on your screen right now. This is what I use, for example, to control my AirSpy HF Plus Discovery, which is SDR Console V3. Another software that I use to control my RSPDX, SDR Uno. This is another example where you see the waterfall, you see the signals pop up. This is an actual screen capture of what I was receiving in the 25-meter band with my RSPDX on the famous MLE30 loop that we talked about earlier. Gives you an idea of what it looks like. Computer control.
All right.
Yeah.
Very good. So we want to talk about some other things that we can use that dreaded internet for, because some people may not initially want to buy a radio, but we'd like them to listen to a radio or listen to radio stations, listen to information, listen to entertainment, listen to music. There are many places you can go online, and this is great for people who spend a lot of time on the internet. They want to maybe tune around, find some things to do on the internet other than watch cat videos, and sorry to Paul the cat, but there's lots of other things you can do with websites. We've got World Radio Map. You can go in, pick a place you want to listen to local radio stations streaming online. There's a lot of these different ones. Online Radio Net, another one. I use a lot of these myself to go and listen to particular stations. You can also use them for paralleling what you might be picking up on a shortwave station. This is more for domestic stations, though, for listening to medium wave and FM stations in different parts of the world. Listen online radio, another one. You can pick a country, a continent, then a country. Live online radio is another one. They're all similar. Many of them have different radio stations, though, available on different websites. So you can check through some of these and find stations to listen to. There's just so many ways to go out there and explore. This is where we come down to, it's not necessarily, we like DX, we like radios, but there are people who might just like to listen to something, and they don't necessarily have to have a radio to do it. They can use their internet to access these radio stations. And this is becoming something important with what's going on right now as well. This website fascinates me. Many of you have used it already. Some of you may not know about it. It's called Radio Garden. It is phenomenal. It invites you to tune in thousands of live radio stations across the globe. As they say in their publicity, by bringing distant voices close, radio connects people and places. From its very beginning, radio signals have crossed borders. Radio makers and listeners have imagined both connecting with distant cultures as well as reconnecting with people from home, from thousands of miles away, planting seeds for the future and keeping the weeds at bay. You rotate this globe, there are little green dots all over the globe. You zero in on a dot, click, and you have radio stations in that city or a particular radio station. You're listening to what the people are listening to in those locations. Thousands and thousands of stations available on this one site. It is quite a remarkable tool to use to get around the world via radio on the internet.
It's
Oops,
also
sorry.
available as an app on smartphones and tablets.
Of course, we have the online SDRs, and this is something that you guys were talking about today in Dan's presentation about what's going on in Ukraine. There are medium wave stations on the air in Ukraine. Somehow, magically, they are still broadcasting, thank goodness, and the locals are listening to them. We can listen as well. I checked this out this afternoon. I called up the map, zero in on Ukraine, neighboring countries, look and see what stations are there. And you can then go to an SDR in that area and tune it in and listen to the stations that are broadcasting through someone's SDR located close to the station you're trying to hear. So many people have been doing this right now. We think this would be an excellent message to get out to people around the world. Here in Canada, our huge Ukrainian population, we can listen to those stations. We know how to get to them using these SDRs, but we don't speak Ukrainian and we don't know what they're saying. Get the word out to the Ukrainian community around you, though, and have them go and just go to a website and listen to what their family and friends in Ukraine are listening to via the computer. I think it's just an incredible tool, but we know about this. And I don't think the media and people out there are telling the average everyday public about this. This could be a whole way of introducing those people to, in particular right now for a very specific and important reason, but down the road or for anyone else with any interest in any part of the world, this is a way for them to stay in touch using their computer, not really even knowing, quite understanding maybe at the beginning that they're actually listening to a radio, but that radio is somewhere else and they're able to tune it and tune to what they want to try to listen to. So a great, incredible technology that we have available to us.
And I would like to add here is to have everybody in the hobby understand to stop creating barriers and saying, listening to a shortwave station with a QESDR somewhere else in the world is cheating. There's no cheating. It's you're listening to whatever you want on whatever radio that's online, and let's stop having barriers. It's not productive. There's nothing productive in making rules that never existed, really. We decided that somebody has a rule, and I just want to say, let's get down the barriers. Let's tear down that wall.
So we're going to leave you with this screen, and we'll be able to talk about some of these things. Things that you can do. You can maybe do them in your own town. There's some things that we've done, some things we want to try and do. Do it in your community. Talk to your local newspapers, community groups, radio stations. Talk to them about links to websites around the world. Introduce people to online receivers, show them how to do it. Introduce them to radio clubs down the road, medium wave, shortwave, general coverage, utilities, pirates. Introduce shortwave radios, show and tell what they are. You can do this using the tools that we have. If you use Skype, if you use Zoom, ways to bring groups of people together. Link to frequency lists, where to find what's out there, EIBI space, shortwave info, HF underground for pirates. We looked at lots of free software available. This could be more for people in the hobby that, maybe haven't expanded out of shortwave broadcasting, get them into the utilities, get these digital decoding modes, many of the decoders free. Here's something interesting. I did this in the past and we're thinking of doing it again. Our ham band in Montreal, the 2-meter band and the 70 centimeters are dead. There is nothing going on. There's no one on the radio. You can leave it scan the repeaters all day long. We don't hear anybody. Go on there. Gilles and I are going to set this up. We're going to be listening to something on the radio and we're going to go on 2 meters, pick a repeater and start talking to each other about what we're doing. I guarantee there's people out there scanning and listening, but there's nothing going on. The moment we start talking about something, people will come out of the woodwork. Once we got their ear, we can start to talk to them about it. If you've got ham repeaters in your local area and there is some activity, just pop on there and start talking to people, maybe about, you'll get into the subject of what you've been listening to, get that word out, maybe get them interested in what's going on the radio. We have some ham clubs that have been looking for speakers at monthly meetings. If you're comfortable going out and talking to people and you want to go out and talk about general coverage transceivers that hams are using, talk to them about what lives outside of their ham bands. Talk to them about these different stations, these different decoding things. Get them using more of their radios than just the ham bands. You might be able to find places that are looking for people to come and talk to them, whether it's on Zoom or whether it's in person. Go and check out those Facebook groups that we're going to give you that list of them. Maybe create your own in your own area. Share information and your personal knowledge about what we do with other people. Speak with your local community or campus radio stations if you have one. We started a show in 1987 and it's still going and people are listening. We don't know who many of those people are, but they're listening. We know that through our Facebook group, how many people are going and listening to our YouTube shows after the show is aired. 500, 600 people, 700 people, sometimes going in over 1,000 on a couple of the shows. You might want to try and start your own show on a program, on a radio station, if they've got an open slot like our show. Why not? We've got a major story breaking right now. Worldwide attention to Ukraine. Prepare some information on what you've been hearing, these frequencies and stations we've talked about in the Winterfest today, web streams, where people can access these radio stations and get information. Share that with people who don't know anything about this. The media, in most cases, is not going to talk about this because many of them don't know about it. So I think we need to take it upon ourselves to get that word out to people. The more people know about these things, the more people will know about us, our organizations, our clubs, our knowledge that we can share with people. Get people listening to the radio. I don't care what they use, a real radio, a streaming, online SDR, websites, I don't care. Listen to the radio, listen to content, enjoy it, learn from it.
Yep.
When you hear something you enjoy, let the broadcasters know as well. They need to know we're out there. Make radio a two-way communication medium. They're speaking to us. We owe it to speak back to them. Gilles has an important line that he uses in every one of our radio shows. And I think you can share that line with people to wrap up this talk today.
Okay, guys, turn the radio on and listen.
It's as simple as that. That's what we got to say. We've been trying a lot of these things. We're getting success with some of them. We've got new people listening to the radio, new people buying radio. Like Gilles said, I could not imagine that we would be hearing so many people coming on Gilles' YouTube channel and asking about buying their first shortwave radio.
Yep.
We're in 2022. And these people are just finding out and they're looking for our help. We're the people that know this stuff. If we keep it to ourselves, there will end up being no more groups and no more people to listen to things. And we'll start to, I don't like reading that memorial list every year, but it's reality. When I see all these new young people coming in, it gives me a good feeling, and that there's hope for the future. But we need to help, and we need to do some of these things. Anybody can do it if you set your mind and your heart to it. And if what we do is important to you, go out and do some of those things.
And instead of being sad that the station's going away, like we have some news, 8HK Radio Japan might be switching to Japanese only. Be active, write to them. Even if a station is still on the air, don't think that they're going to be here next year if you never write. Because if at some point they have no idea you're out there, maybe they're going to switch it off just because they think there's no one. You owe that to the stations to let them know, hey, I'm listening, love your shows. Thank you for being on shortwave.
And we don't necessarily just want a QSL from you.
No.
No. Anyways, okay. Thank you, everybody. We sound like preachers here. Remember Ian McFarland? He once stuck a name on me. He called me a shortwave evangelist. I'm passing that hat over to Gilles, because what he's been doing right now is, he deserves a lot more credit than he gives himself for what he's brought into this hobby in the last few years. So we're more than happy to take questions from anybody or any comments that people have. Brian Chappell, I see you first with a hand up on screen. Go ahead.
I'll tell you what, Sheldon, you want to manage the questions, or I can do so like I have been. Normally what I do is I serve as the traffic cop and MC.
Oh, sorry. No, yeah, that's great. That's even better. Thanks. Go ahead.
Focus on the, and then I think I've gotten them in order. They show up on my screen in order here. And
Okay.
I unmute folks to ask their question and then put their hands down for them. Tom Swisher is first up, and take it away, Tom.
Great presentation, guys. It's kind of inspired me to contact some people that I know and do a presentation. Just kind of talk about shortwave again, and so on and so forth. But Sheldon, I do have a question for you about your MLA 30. Where did you put it? Where did you mount it that made a big improvement?
I was shocked. I put it outside on a 2x4, about 12 feet up on the top of my back fence.
Okay.
And that's it. It's not rotatable in any way. It's fixed. It's out there. It's survived ice storm and stuff already. And I swear the first day I plugged it into the radio, I got in touch with Gilles right away. I said, I cannot believe I've been sitting here whining and complaining about all this noise. And I put that, $50 antenna or whatever it cost me Canadian. And it was, the difference was night and day. And it's not like I didn't have antennas out there. I had long wires around in different, in the yard. I got 35, 40 feet in the backyard. Nothing is doing what that little antenna is doing out there on the 2x4.
Okay, well, I'm going to give it a try. I've got it mounted in the window of the office right now on the second floor, and it seems to work okay, but I'm going to try and get it outside, maybe on the garage roof or something.
Very good.
See what I can do.
You're gonna see definite improvement there.
Cool. All right, thanks.
Richard's muted.
What happened to me there? Did somebody call on me? What's the story?
And I messed up.
Yeah, it looks like you turned me off without calling on me.
I turned myself off. That's the problem.
Okay.
Operator error. Go ahead, Vince.
Yeah, okay, quick question. Where can you find this MLA 30 antenna? I checked about 5 or 6 sources just here this evening, and they all say it's out of stock and not available. So what's the story on where you can get one of these things?
You can get it. Amazon has it.
Amazon says it's out. Amazon just said it was out.
Okay, then I got mine off of eBay. eBay will have dozens and dozens of sellers.
Okay.
It's all the same. So whatever, if it says MLA 30, they all have the same exact thing.
Okay, all right. I checked a couple of eBay sellers. They also didn't have it, but I'll keep looking.
You should find some, unless there's some really big problem of MLA 30 stock.
Well, the Amazon people said they didn't know when it was going to be back in stock. So
they're all coming from China.
I think we're looking at supply line problems or something.
That is possible. And MLA 30 Plus is the newer model, but I believe the MLA 30, whatever you choose, whether it says Plus or not, you're getting the latest
Well,
one.
I'll keep looking. I just thought you had an easy fix.
Gilles got so many people to buy them on his channel that there's none left anymore.
So that's what I was thinking. I think he was too good of a salesman.
He's a good salesman. I can admit to that.
Alrighty, Greg Majewski, you're next.
Okay, thank you for this I have a few comments. One of the things that I do is I take my issues of QST, which is the amateur radio, and I give it to the local library. I have found that occasionally has done that. And like Gilles was saying about going into a park, well, you know what? I did that with, I was experimenting with the Air Spy U loop. And at least 3 people came over and said, "What are you doing?" And then I explained it. And then one of the people was and he was amazed that because he used to, over in Ireland, listen to shortwave all the time. And then I was telling him about that. So going to parks and getting public exposure is another good way.
Absolutely.
And I've got a comment on the ML30A or ML30 or 30 plus. I have one. One of the better things that you can do to improve it is you get yourself a 10-foot piece of wire, which makes roughly a 1 meter diameter loop, and hook that on. The other thing is I had a wooden frame that I put it on, which was one that I was using in the park. We moved it around the house and found a very quiet location. And it turns out it's over a bed. It's the guest bedroom. So there's never everything on it. And I have another one for you. I know you like the Texan portables.
Yep.
So I have found with the Texan portable, when you go into the external antenna jack, it doesn't disconnect the whip. And the whip will still pick up local noise sources. And one of the better ways that I found the solution is I put a 50 ohm termination in parallel with it with a T, simple, T, and that helps a lot. And it also helps greatly if you put it on an external wire antenna, because it doesn't, with the high impedance, it causes it to pick up more noise. Pulling it down drops a lot of that noise and helps a lot. But hey, thanks for an excellent presentation. Just for everyone's information, it's not just shortwave listening. I happen to like motor cars, specifically sports cars, and they have a lot of the same problems. What you see is the people who love the hot rods of the 50s and 60s, and once again, there's a one good club in the area, and they insist that only 70 cars or earlier can be members of their club. And they actually have, I've seen a lot of younger people with Japanese cars, and they're doing the exact same thing that us old geeks were doing with cars in the 60s. And that's another thing is, no, don't make any artificial barriers like you guys were saying. Yep. Thank you for the presentation, and up with the next victim.
And that next victim is Fred Zalewski.
Oh, I just love to be described that way. Thank you. What's the diameter on that loop? I was looking for it quickly online as you were discussing it. How big is that thing?
That's a good question. I get that question all the time, and I always forget. Somebody always comes up and says, "Oh, it's but it's fairly small for a loop, honestly."
Yeah, terrific. Sounds very practical.
You're looking for something that is kind of a little stealth. It definitely is something you don't see much. But
yeah, it's not stealth though so much. Just placement. I wonder, Sheldon, I remember yesterday, I think you made the comment about trying to attract people in new ways here. Is anybody keeping track of new faces? I mean, I saw a lot of new names.
Yeah.
At this fest, and it's exciting. And I didn't know until your comment, Sheldon, that it was sort of probably by design, but I think the outreach is great, being active versus being passive. This is the first really active conversation, active approach I've heard. How many new folks, first timers, do you think we attracted this year?
Yeah, we are keeping a check-in list. Rich has supplied us with the people that have registered. We have that list. Our three co-hosts in the hospitality suite. Where when we see a newcomer come in, we're asking people, is this your first Winterfest? And if it is, we just ask them how they found out about it. So we will compile all of that. We'll be giving that back to Rich and John, and we'll look at, what publicity we did was most effective. So we'll have that information. We're trying to remember to ask everybody. There's a lot of you that have been in the forums that haven't come into the hospitality suite yet, so we don't have you marked off the list yet. So there many of you could be newcomers. So if you are a first timer, once we're through here and you want to come into the hospitality suite, identify yourself for us as newcomer, and we'd love to know how you found out about us. We went through this thing with I'm into bird watching that many of you know, and I joined a club many years ago, and like my wife says, whatever I stick my nose into, I stick my nose into too far, and I get overly wrapped up in something. And of course I've done that with this hobby, and Gilles, I think, is the same way. The club, the organization, was a group that's been in existence since 1917 here in Montreal. Yet they spent all of their time looking inward, and they had no marketing people or outreach people. The president, after meeting me for a little while, said to me, "We need to form an outreach committee." And we did just that. And we started to go outside the walls, outside the kingdom, and getting out to the general public. And we no criticism of what Greg said a few minutes ago, but doing whatever electronic gizmos he did to that radio, and cutting out the plug in the antenna, that's good for people that know what they're doing. Somebody brand new buying their first radio, we don't want them doing that yet unless they know what they're doing. So there's different levels that you can approach different types of people once you know who you're dealing with. So you got to start at square one, and many of us have to bring ourselves back to that square one when we started, and that is the most difficult thing for a lot of people to do. We start talking about what we do, and sometimes we talk way over people's heads and we don't realize we're doing it.
Yeah.
We have it with our bird guides. I tell them, you've got to go back to day one when you first saw that cardinal, when you first saw that blue jay, what have you. If you can get back to that experience and excitement level and get those radio people back to that beginning and excitement level that you had, then you're getting somewhere.
Yeah,
that's a great point. Hey, just a quick last comment on the people decrying sort of the activity on the FM repeaters. I think that's a national phenomenon. And one of the things I have noticed is DMR, of course, not the DMR that comes to mind, but digital mobile radio, DMR repeaters. It's an interesting network, and it's a way, they're all networked, and it's an interesting way of expanding your reach as well. So if you find that you don't have luck on the local 2-meter or 70 centimeter scene, and you're interested in a digital mode, I'd highly recommend it. It's cheap to get into, and seems to be very active.
And I think we'll add to that, just be active. I think too many people are stuck on, I'm hearing nothing, I won't do nothing. Rather than doing that is, I don't hear nothing, let me make a call, see what's out there. I think a lot of people are just not doing it.
Yeah, very good. Thank you. Very provocative, guys. Thanks.
Sheldon, let's you and I get together, since I know you've got some ideas for what a questionnaire would look like. Let's go ahead and get one together, and we can put it out. Google form. There's a variety of different free tools available, and we can send it to everyone soon after the fest, so that we can try to gauge this more formally across the 270 odd folks who registered for the event. Next question comes up from Brian Chappell. Go ahead, Brian.
Well, I've raised this question briefly at our last online CDX meeting, but I'll ask it again since there are more people here. The the question I have is looking at this group, at least with the those with cameras on, is we all look old enough to remember the Cold War and that period of time where owning a shortwave radio gave you access to the world that no one else had. But obviously that's not the world we live in today. There are obviously Alexa or whatever, these ways of streaming things directly to your home. So what I really want to know is from those people who are buying their first radios, is why. I mean, if you're doing a survey, just the question, and I think if we knew the answer to this question might help bring more people in, is what is the attraction for those who are too young to have had the attraction during the Cold War? Like with all these choices, why did you buy that portable radio, and why didn't the thrill wear off after a few months, and why are you continuing to use it? Like that just, I think it's a useful question, and it certainly one that just bugs me. I understand why we're here and why we enjoy this and why I have these gadgets, but why does a 21st century person?
You know, I do a lot of
Any
talks in
business.
elementary schools, you know, on various subjects, and there's a lot of smart young kids out there, and they're quite interested in how things work. And one thing I tell them right away is, when we were growing up, and now when we say, well, not so much now, but growing up, when you said the word wireless, what did it mean? It meant a radio, right? I mean, the Brits call it a wireless set. When we explain to kids today that if we didn't have radio, that something that's wireless, it's not your, you know, connecting your computer to through your modem to get to the internet. That's wireless, but it's also radio. And how much of these gadgets that everybody are using today, we would not even have if we didn't have radio signals. Radio waves that's what we live off of. They're everything, all these new tools and games and devices we use is all radio based. And once they start, you see suddenly a light switch goes on all of a sudden, and wireless just means there's no wires attached. You know, and when you tell them that this word wireless, where did it come from? And you tell them it's all about radio, they start, you know, the smart ones, and there's a lot of smart ones out there, young ones, start thinking about this. And then you magically show them these little boxes of, you know, what you can do with wireless, but that it's all radio based. It's education. It's education. It's introducing new things. Radio can be new again for a lot of people.
There's also a very unique aspect, you know, look at all of us. I'm sure we all gone through the same thing. I listen to the radio, you listen to the radio. Your brother, your family, your friends are like, oh, you're listening to that static again. And how can you explain that you like listening to that static to somebody that doesn't understand it? Also, there's that mystery of why we also get hooked to it. That is, I think, deeply personal in some way. That is unexplainable. There is a side to it that is unexplainable. Why we turn it on and it's like, wow, I'm hooked. I'm going to do this for the rest of my life. You know,
those kids are using computers all day long. They're doing whatever it is they do with them. But we just shown you what you can do with radio and computers. So give them another thing to do with their computers. Like I said, it doesn't need to be that radio box. You know, they can do what we do, but through it different ways. The key is the consumption of the end product. How they get to it, I don't care. The fact that they get to it and they learn something from it, get whatever they want from it, there's hope. There's hope.
Yeah, and I think it's mostly to get as much people in. And you have a certain number that gets in and will stay there.
Yeah,
love it.
That's a real good way to think about it, Gilles, as well. I've got we've got a 9-person queue here with their hands up. I've got someone on the phone, 570-784-0965. I've tried to unmute you. If you're out there and you have your question, do a *6 on your phone and join us. Otherwise, I will move on to our next question. I will do that. And Jim Renfrew, I'm going to unmute you there. Go ahead with your question.
Yeah, it's a comment primarily. First of all, Sheldon, I can appreciate how you've been tagged with the name evangelist from how you were describing things. You know, you could have substituted a few words in what you described as opportunities for what I do as a pastor in a Presbyterian church that is also suffering some membership loss. So it's very interesting that you were tagged with that name. Just about every organization I've been a part of is experiencing some sort of deep decline. And it's fascinating I've not been to this Winterfest before, but it's fascinating that it's the same kind of subject that I run into in a variety of other meetings. One thing that struck me is that for my whole life, and maybe this is a boy thing, I don't know, collecting. I remember collecting soda bottle caps when I was 5 years old, and stamps and coins and other people, it's, you know, birds and baseball cards and things like that. To me, it seemed like an essential dimension of growing up as a boy. And I just wonder if that collecting sense is still there in a younger generation. I just don't see it in the same way. When you talk about baseball cards, it's guys my age who are fired up about it, not kids that I know. So I'm just interested in what your thoughts are about that kind of collecting frame of mind.
We're by nature, and a friend of mine, an old CIDX member who came to Canada from Iraq, actually. He used to print our bulletin when we did a hard copy club bulletin. He looked at what we were doing and what this bulletin was all about. And, you know, he'd obviously been exposed to radio in his life. But he said to us, this is no different than what other people do. Humans are hunters and collectors. And look at what we do. You know, we hunt for radio stations, we collect QSL cards, we show off our trophies that we've collected. It's common, a thread in humans for some reason. I don't quite know why, but yes, you're right. It's different with kids today. I know, like I said, I've been doing some stuff with schools, predominantly on the bird watching side and conservation issues and things like that. They're going out and they're collecting things already. They're going out and collecting sounds. They're collecting their observations. They're writing, they're sketching things. They're gathering these things, the hunting and the gathering. And then they're bringing it back and they're analyzing it. And they're, you know, what did we see? Why did we see it? Where did we see it? Those things relate to every subject matter you talked about. And radio is just another one of them. How we get them to what we do is maybe a little more challenging because there are all these other things that they're into. But at some point, I think they're gonna mesh. They might cross somewhere. It's not gonna happen to everybody, but you got, you know, throw it at the wall and see what sticks. That's what we got to do. Worry about the noise. Yeah, it's a challenge.
Evangelist animation, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Next, we have Saul Broody. Let me ask Saul to unmute here. I should have been on.
Okay, there we go. Hi, it's Brody, by the way, Richard.
And I should know that after these.
Yeah, you should. Okay, a couple things. Back when I was vice president of my local ham radio club, we were very fortunate to have Richard Cuff drive all the way down from where he lives to Philadelphia and speak to our members on shortwave listening, and that was great. And now that I'm president of the club, it's been several years, and it would be nice to have. I'm inspired by your plea for outreach, Sheldon. Would love to have someone who's more well versed in shortwave, general shortwave listening than I, and who's as inspiring as some of you, like Sheldon, speak to our meeting via Zoom. So if anybody's interested in doing that, we meet on the third Thursday of the month. So you can get in touch with me. Another thing I wanted to mention, speaking of this, of listening to the radio on via the internet, I've been enthralled with a wonderful app, but it's only for listening to music, but I really highly recommend it. And it's got radio in the name. It's Radio O. That's radio followed by 4 O's. I don't know how many of you know it. I just went to their website, radio.com, and I'm on an iPad right now, and it asked me to download the app, but I'm sure you can access it. I imagine you can access it with a computer and not use an app, just through a web interface. So I highly recommend that. Oh, let me tell you what it does quickly. You choose a country. For instance, you choose Argentina, and then on a map, and then you choose a decade. So I can go to the 1920s, and it will play all these very old recordings of Argentinian music in the 20s. Or I could choose the 1990s, and it would play modern Argentinian bands. It's really wonderful. And people contribute to the sounds. In other words, you register for the site, and you can contribute musical connections that will be incorporated into the site. So it's hands-on. Anyway, yeah, somebody put it up there in the chat. Thank you. And thanks to you, Sheldon and Gilles.
All righty, next on the list is Bert Harold. You have unmuted. Go ahead with your question, Bert.
Good evening. I just wanted to just shout out a few things. Just thanks to Sheldon for this great presentation, and thanks to the NASWA group. This is the first Winterfest I've been to. I thought this was a really great couple of days of presentations, and I kind of liked having the Zoom format just because you can see the presentation real big on my screen in front of me. I actually took some snapshots of some of the slides. So I thought this came off really well, and it was definitely, for $10, a great bargain in my opinion. I've been a ham since 1985. Not a super duper shortwave listener. I started out as a shortwave listener, but sort of more went the ham radio route and kind of played with electronics throughout my life and became an electrical engineer and did some other things. But I've had ebbs and flows with my interest in radio, and I just wanted to say, Gilles' channel really sort of kind of give me a little bit more interest in getting back into it again a few years ago. I think I stumbled into it in about 2017, 2018, somewhere in there. And I really like the appeal to kind of the new radio enthusiasts and kind of answering simple questions to people that are just stumbling into this. I thought that was pretty interesting. And I just wanted to pass it along, for people who haven't maybe done some of his live shows or sort of been in that environment. A week ago, especially, I thought, like what he alluded to, was very exciting to actually be tuning along with him, from your own station and sort of encountering these different stations. And then, it's not just himself, but there's a lot of people in the chat. We interact with one another, and we say, hey, we're finding this station over here. We're finding this signal over here. This is being transmitted from this place. And I think that's a really unique way of sort of, enjoying the hobby. Pre-internet, we didn't really have that kind of thing unless you got together with some friends at your house. But to have people in different parts of the country or even different parts of the world all sort of tuning together and sharing information, and I mean, to me, that's really exciting. And I think it's kind of a unique experience. I don't know how many other channels on YouTube are doing that kind of thing, but when it becomes more participatory like that, and you can sort of interact and really see the enjoyment and the excitement, tuning around, to me, that was pretty thrilling. So And, it is nice, like he said earlier, sometimes we do feel isolated in our basements. I'm here in a basement right now, a lot of junk behind me. A lot of us have these setups and we are sort of isolated, especially with COVID the last couple of years, unless we got some local radio buddies that we could get together with. Sometimes it does feel a little bit kind of claustrophobic, and it is nice to have that interaction with some other folks. So I think that's been a lot of fun for me personally. And I've tried a little bit here to expand his channel out into the ham radio universe and have a net. It's sort of sputtered. We haven't really gotten a ham radio net together yet, but maybe one of these days we'll expand it into that domain. But anyway, just thank you to everyone for doing this, and it's been a lot of fun.
Thanks, Bert. Oh, by the way, Sheldon, I need to give you a housekeeping message. Someone with a 780 area code, I'm presuming that's Mr. Delmage, needs you to let him into the suite so he can accept people. So,
Oh my goodness.
People want to be hospitable, and you have to let him in so he can let people in, or something like that. So.
Okay, Gilles will stay here. I'll go over and let him in. I'll be right back.
Thanks. I see those cell phone things. All righty. Next on the list, and wanting to we can cross technologies. Vince, I don't need to unmute you because you're still your mic is open. Vince, come back with your question.
Okay, I just want to say a couple of things. First of all, a shameless plug. It's not an entry-level antenna, but I found the Wellbrook loops to be really good. And I've set them up just in my back garden on a 12-foot light stand with a rotator, and you can work stations all day long in a very low noise environment. So it's useful to do, but like I say, it's not an entry-level antenna because it's more expensive than that, but it really works well. And the other thing is, I'm not as much of an evangelist as Sheldon and Gilles are, but I have taken nothing bigger than a Texan 380 out in interstate highway rest stops and just sat on a bench and had lunch and listened to shortwave radio and maybe even logged a few stations. And I've never failed to attract someone who was curious about that. And what? Say again?
It's all right. It was just
Oh, I said some cross.
continue. Yep.
Anyway, so I've tried to be an evangelist in that way, and I found those interstate highway rest stops to be a good place. But I've also done it in places like the Botanical Gardens in Edinburgh, Scotland, and in the patio area of a Highland Inn in northern Scotland, and other places like that. In almost all cases, there's at least one person, quite often a young person, who's curious about what the hell it is you're doing, all right? And they'll come over and you can show them. And I think that's useful to do. And by the way, thanks for this subject. I think it's a good one.
Great. All righty. Rob Wagner, you're next. So let me unmute you. Dangerous, I know, but we will go ahead and do so. Go ahead, Rob.
Okay, good. Thank you. Fabulous session from Gilles and Sheldon. Really enjoyed it. Lots of great ideas there. And I've actually taken a screenshot of that. I think it was that last screen with all the different things that you could do. I thought that was a really well compiled list. So good work, guys. I just wanted to draw everybody's attention to the problem with local interference and so on. And I know it's an issue all around the world these days. Here in Australia, there is a website which is really, really good. It's got a strange name, but it's really, really good. And it's called qrm.guru. And it's called Resolving Interference for Amateur Radio. Now, although it's Australian and although it's sort of dealing with Australian circumstances, there is so much stuff there that would be really useful for, well, amateur radio operators and shortwave listeners, wherever you are, because so much of the information is current. So I'm just about to put this in the chat there now, and check that out. It's got case studies which are really quite interesting. Basic diagnostics, locating noise sources, noise reduction in the shack, techniques for resolving noise, power line noise, dealing with neighbours, support for solar panels and inverters. There's a whole range of log sheets and so on for monitoring when the noise is happening, because that might help you to track it down and trying to reduce the noise both on your property and beyond your property. So there's some really, really good things there. As I say, it's Australian based, but there may be some really good opportunity there for grabbing some ideas for yourselves there. Really enjoyed the session. I'm going to disappear shortly and get on with the rest of my day. But I have just loved the weekend. It's been really fabulous catching up with everybody. And this is the second fest that I've been to, and enjoyed it the whole weekend. I did miss out on the 1:30 a.m. and the 3 o'clock and the 4:30 a.m. sessions for me. So I'm looking forward to the videos of those, because that'll be really good to have that. So I appreciate you being able to make those available for us sleeping on the other side of the world. Thanks, guys, and we'll say 73 to all of you, and I'll get out of here. Cheers for now.
Cheers. Thanks, Rob. Dennis, go ahead. You had your arm up next.
Well, thank you. This is the second fest that I've been to. I lived in Northern Virginia, and I wanted to go to the first one, but because of jobs and whatever, and I never got there to the Pancho Villa room. But that was always on my goal. So last year, opened this up, and I've enjoyed both years. You people who, like Richard and everybody who are organized it, do a great job. And the presenters have just been incredibly interesting. Couple of things, I have an ML30 plus, and that did make a big difference to me. I live in a 1,500 or 15,000 population town. So there's plenty of noise, and also got a couple of light fixtures in the house that I just detest when they get turned on. And I get, short of replacing everything, I don't know what to do. So I started SWLing, or got into this, about 1961, because my uncle asked if I wanted to ride down and visit this ham. And so Hal was on doing his QSOs all afternoon, but about sunset, my uncle said, well, we've about time to go. And then Hal says, wait a minute, I got to show you what else we can do here. And he started SWLing, and I was hooked. And boy, I came home and I talked that up to my mom and dad, which before that, all I could do is, when the TV was boring, I'd pull the focal radio off the kitchen counter and lay on the living room floor and have it low so I wouldn't disturb anybody, but learned tuning around, that if you face the radio this way, you might get a better reception than the other way. And so I talked this whole thing up about wanting to get a radio. And my dad took the initiative to talk to an engineer down at the radio station. We had a little, radio station in a 4,000 population town. And Marv says, well, come on over to the house and I'll show you, because he says, I got all kinds of catalogs. And he put on the recommended for a Lafayette KT 200, which then I had to learn how to do a decent solder joint. Anyway, I finished that off. Dad decided to take it down to the RCA store and have the guy there just take a look over and see how I'd done. And he'd found a couple of cold solder joints. And took it back, and I hooked up an old speaker and ran a wire up on the roof. Dad made some brackets so that it was about a foot off the roof of a ranch style house. And that's how I got into it. And man, I started a logbook, and that was the heyday. Man, I tuned from one station to the next. So I've tried to get other people interested. My kids think that's just a quirky hobby for Dad. And what you were saying, whoever was saying before about collectors, you know, my wife and my daughter are great knitters. I mean, they can knit up a storm. But they also have a collection of knit yarn, you know, on a shelf. But they make a lot of stuff. So that, and other people will ask what they're knitting. So what you were saying and what the Japanese presented last night really impressed me about their publications being written for like no more than a middle school understanding. Because I think I get frustrated sometimes in some of these publications get too technical for me. And I get lost and frustrated. So when I search the internet for information, I really latch on to the ones that are really easy to get into. I mean, I understand that some of you people are incredible with technology, and we got to thank you for it because we get better radios out of it, and we get better tips for listening and antennas and stuff. So anyway, that's basically it. You know, that I think about, I don't know whether the Boy Scouts and the Girl Scouts still have their radio merit badge. And also volunteering, if a science teacher or somebody, because once you wanted to get a little more info and have somebody come in and do a little talk and presentation, because a lot of what I got into radio for back in the Cold War, I was listening for content and comparing content between the stations. And whether you're listening to China or Moscow or Japan or Australia or any of them, you get a little bit different slant on it, but there's a kernel that boils down out of that. And that's what intrigued me, so that when I get to school and this topic would come up, you know, similar to what we're doing with Ukraine, I would throw in tidbits. Well, how do you know that? Well, I heard it from so-and-so, you know, I heard it from Voice of America or Deutsche Welle or Radio Hilversum, you know, Holland, or, you know, well, how do you understand all those languages? People don't even understand at that time, all these, they wanted the English people to hear, understand. So I think, you know, that's, I guess we're all evangelists to some degree. So, you know, and when we're having fun, share the fun, you know, just like campers say, hey, have you been to this campsite or whatever? So that's probably enough wind out of me. But anyway, I just really enjoy this and glad that we're doing it on Zoom. Otherwise, I wouldn't be here. I'm in Wisconsin. So, you know, to head out to Pennsylvania is scenic and it's interesting, but you know, it takes a bit of time and investment. And I think the reason that you have around 300 people last year and this year, and about 100 and some signed on at any given session, speaks volumes. And I think we shouldn't give this up. You know, I'm glad to be a member of NASWA, and I follow all kinds of stuff on some of the Facebook, you know. And so anyway, there might have been a few other things that I wanted to comment on, but that's probably enough. I thank you again for everybody.
Very good. Robin, N6RLS, you got a hand up.
I do. Thank you. First of all, I'll keep it quick. Thanks to Gilles and Sheldon and anyone else who helped put this thing together. And as Dennis just said, I wouldn't be at this either if it wasn't on Zoom, because I live in Berkeley, California. And I think I'd heard of it before, but there was just no way I was going to be able to travel there. One of the things that occurred to me a little bit earlier this afternoon, there was a guy from the VOA talking about monitoring. And at one point, how they monitor the VOA and other stations and so forth. At one point, he said something about trying to sell shortwave broadcasting to the people who control the purse strings. And he said it's a tough sell. And one of the things he mentioned in passing was, even if we put it on shortwave, even if we went back to broadcasting on shortwave, who has radios today in the target countries? Who has radios with shortwave bands on them who would be able to listen? And so that brought up a thought about, I watch Gilles' YouTube videos all the time about this new radio, that new radio, the MLA 30, all the rest of it. When I was a kid, I'm 71. When I was a kid, shortwave manufacturers advertised all the time. You couldn't open, there were a lot of magazines, you'd open it up, hear the world, buy this radio, it has these bands and it does this and it does that. There was Radio Shack. My introduction to shortwave listening came from a local radio station in the Bay Area. And what the guy did in the early 60s during the height of the Cold War, or one of the heights of the Cold War, was to broadcast with sinister music, you know, adding to the drama, snippets of Radio Moscow in English. Hear the words from behind the Iron Curtain. Tune in now, and dramatic music, drum roll, Radio Moscow. And then you'd hear this sort of crackly guy in English talking about, you know, how the damned Americans were doing this and Kennedy's was bad and blah, 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 blah. It was the usual propaganda stream. But, oh, really? I can listen to that on shortwave? And I had a little Silvertone tube radio that had a shortwave band on it. It's very hard to tune because it went from, I don't know, 7 to 25 or something on all one band. So it was kind of hard to tune. My first real shortwave radio for me was the Lafayette HE30. And I spent the mid 60s glued to that thing, listening to all kinds of stuff from behind the Iron Curtain and elsewhere, and keeping a log and all that kind of stuff. I guess my question out of all this is, what can we do to get people who make these radios or who are involved, who would benefit, I guess, from it, to start advertising and make people aware that they can tune in and hear things and what they can hear. Today, you could do not just print ads, but you could put ads on the internet demonstrating the radios. I know Gilles does that, but I'm talking about advertising from the manufacturers with snippets of tuning the radio, hearing things, seeing the waterfalls on the radios that do that. It would take a little advertising, I think, to get the general public, not the choir here, but the general public to be interested and know about this kind of capability. And people could advertise apps that you could put in your smartphone. I know they're out there, but do they advertise them? Do people know that you can get, how many people know about Radio Garden, which isn't radio directly, it's on the internet, but I've gone nuts over that since I first heard a passing reference to it on the International Radio Report a couple of weeks ago. I've been going nuts with that thing, but in terms of radios and, you know, the ability to hear shortwave, to hear actual radio, how to get manufacturers, I guess, to push that stuff and make it known better. That's kind of my question. Anyway, thank you very much.
Yeah, Gilles, you might want to answer that about, we talked about in another session about some information you got from Texan about radio sales.
Yeah. So I wrote to Texan Australia because I had questions and I wondered what questions they would actually answer here. And one of the answers that came back is that they roughly sold about 1 million radios per year. And that is a big, big number. Now, of course, where are these radios going? There's, of course, even if 1/10 of the Asian market would buy, 1/10 of 1% of the Asian market would buy a radio with shortwave, it's definitely millions of radios. There's definitely a interest in radios in certain areas. And also you were talking about who has a shortwave radio today. I think there's a lot more shortwave radios out there that maybe are unused. Maybe they're stuck in the AM or FM band, but they still have shortwave available on them. I think there's a lot more than we think. But as far as that advertising, how to sell shortwave to the general population that is not the geeks that we are, that is a darn good question. It's difficult to do so. You'll have to, you gave a great example. You can listen to the Cold War, and all of these stations of these, bad communist countries. And, of course, it sparks interest for a lot of people doing it like that. Today, what do you do? It's more complicated because it's not as easy as it was to hear something. So you might advertise, but you might buy the radio and return it because, I'm hearing noise and religious broadcasts.
It's up to you, Gilles, and you've done it.
Yeah.
How many radios have you sold by what you do? They're going to sit back and keep making them if somebody like you can go out and start selling them to people, just by talking about them. And I think we can all do that. There's an interesting video that you can find that BBC did a report. I think it was on their BBC One channel. It's out on YouTube, I think. They took some radios out on the street and they stopped people on the street, young people, and they handed them this box. There were people who kids had no idea what this thing was. They were turning knobs and pressing buttons and trying to figure out what does this do? They literally did not know what it was. So it's a hard sell. Yeah, it is a hard sell, but people who know the product are the ones that can sell it. We know the products. So some of these things that we've talked about is, we're having to do their work for them. They're giving us the products out there. There's more radios being made right now by companies like Texan than we've seen in decades. And they're good radios. You mentioned that in the presentation. They're inexpensive radios. Those radios, if you factored them out to, what they would have cost back then when we were buying $700 Sony 2010s and stuff, we're getting performances maybe better than some of those radios for, $100, $200. They're not making these radios if they wouldn't be making them if they didn't think they could sell them.
Yep.
And if they're telling us they're selling 1 million radios a year, they haven't told us where. We want to try and get hold of this guy and get him on our show and talk to him and see how much we can pry out of him. I'd like to know where the radios are being sold, and are they marketing them as AM, FM radios? Every one of you guys so far with your questions has mentioned shortwave. It doesn't have to be shortwave. It can start with any kind of radio. We're the SWLfest. I had it was a Jim Renfrew when we first talked to you this weekend. I'm not really a shortwave listener. I'm a medium FM guy, but you're here. The misnomer of the SWL festival is maybe a bit of it might be a misnomer. We can do whatever we do with any kind of radio and just whatever you get out of it. But we have to get the radios into the hands of the people, and we have to tell them what to do with it. And that's, that when I saw that video of people on the street, 15, 16, 18 years old, not knowing what a radio was, man, that's scary. That is scary stuff. So they're making all these radios, they're selling them to somebody, and we can do that same thing. We're just not going to get the credit for it, but at least we've got the knowledge to share with people. And every person doing their own little bit is going to take it the next step further.
the term advertising nowadays, of course, is frowned on. You know, one of the key words nowadays is influence. And you know, the world is populated by a bunch of influencers. And if you're looking for a lot of how marketing to potential customers is done, it's through influencers. And Gilles and you, Sheldon, are two influencers, whether you like it or not. And it's just the fact you're talking about this stuff and you're demonstrating it. So, you know, it's all about, you know, all of us working in the networks that we have or seeking to expand those networks somehow, you know, reaching out to schools, libraries, whatnot there, you know, the Facebook groups, yeehaw, you know, all that stuff. You know, there, Eric Keller suggesting TikTok. I mean, there's many. It's one of the biggest challenges is the fact that the communications channels and routes of influence are maddeningly diverse. We no longer have 2 or 3 commercial television networks. It's just, it's different now. And that's the way it is. And it's, we need to adapt to that environment because that's where it's going.
Yep.
All right, end of my soliloquy. Fred Zalewski has a paw raised. Let me go ahead and unmute Fred. Dangerous task. Go ahead, Fred.
Thanks, Richard. Yeah, you know, I was kind of stimulated by Brian Chappell's question about how to get young people interested, or what specifically would interest a young person about this. And Gilles, you made an interesting comment back, which I identified with as far as, I'll paraphrase you. I think it's a magic, right? You know, you see this thing and it sort of takes root in you and you can't resist it. And I think it's rooted in curiosity, right? And so there are people that are curious about things and there are people who aren't. And, you know, we, you know, in this group, we could tell our stories. And in fact, Dennis, you did tell your story, which I appreciated. I'll bet you all of our stories have so much in common as far as how we stumbled across this and what interested us and what kind of progression we made. You know, for me, it was hearing AMDX at night, right? Just tuning on an AM radio and then discovering the shortwave band on the kitchen counter radio and then going on from there. But, you know, it's all going to be rooted in curiosity. And I don't care whether you're interested in content or you're interested in gadgetry or propagation or antennas or whatever it is. You know, it could be politics, whatever it is that draws you and keeps you. It's your curiosity that was at the root of it. And I don't think that computing, for example, is going to exclude a curious person from being interested in radio. They, you know, we all, probably most of us on here have some fascination with computing, and to what extent, it doesn't really matter. It's just that these guys, that's where they started in many cases. And, you know, they may be willing to take that next step as we did. But, you know, to Sheldon's point, you have to have an opportunity for exposure. You have to catch the bug, and that exposure, somebody telling, showing, sharing, is really key. And I think that, you know, you come from some position of faith, if you will, that when the message hears some ears, it's going to take root. And you know, so what do? Well, you try to be that influencer, you know, in Richard's parlance, right? You try to share a little bit. But I think it's fascinating. But I you know, at its root, I think, you know, anybody who's inclined to get into this just needs an opportunity, just needs the exposure, and they'll come. And for those that don't, well, then they just didn't have that curiosity. It didn't appeal to them.
Good point. Dave Marthouse, you've got a hand up there. Go ahead and unmute yourself and ask your question if you could, sir. Dave Marthouse, going once, going twice. All right, Bill Bonilla, and I apologize if I mangled your name. Go ahead with your question. Bill. Bill, you have a question? We've got you.
On mute.
Go ahead, Bill.
He's muted.
No, I don't
No,
think
he's
so.
not.
I've got him unmuted. All right. Well, next on the list, I've got my cell caller, or phone caller, 570-784-0965. If you could unmute yourself with a *6. There you go. Go ahead.
Hi, Jeff Michael here. Sheldon, great presentation. Couple of quick comments, but then a question. They have a maker fair in our area that's run by the Children's Museum. 2 years ago, they asked me to come down and do a presentation, and I did this with a fellow ham, and I took my impressive collection of tuned loop antennas down, and what was interesting is it was mostly like the younger kids, preteens, who were asking more questions about them. So look around in your area for maker fairs. The second is about the 2-meter repeater situation. I was in favor of them dropping the code requirement, but I recognize now that when they did, everybody immediately said, okay, well, don't screw with 2 today, and tomorrow you take your general class and nobody gets on 2 meters. Something I can tell you is you don't catch fish if you don't put bait in the water. Now, the other thing was a question. I wanted to ask about Robot 36. That app you were talking about. Now, I have a rule which is never to download apps because most apps just occasionally are interested in harvesting your information, and they want to use your data to do it. So I call it the equivalent of mugging me on the street and then asking me for gas money so you get home. What can you tell me about that Robot 36 app?
If you're talking about the privacy that comes with it, I don't know behind the scenes what they're collecting, but honestly, it is a great app. It is really, really neat. It works fantastically well in decoding slow scan television of all sorts and automatically doing it. I think all I could say, I think you should download it and definitely play with it. You're going to have fun.
Okay. But
sorry, go ahead.
beyond what's that?
Go ahead, Jeff.
Yeah. The other thing is, I mean, outside of downloading, you say it does slow scan, but does it do other utility modes? Or let's put it this way: what can it do besides slow scan?
No, Robot 36 is very limited. It's really slow scan TV only. And a lot of apps for mobile devices actually are very specific to one mode or just a few modes at the same time. There's one called TIVAR, T-I-V-A-R, that has a lot more modes. This one does multiple things. But unfortunately, we do need someone out there that knows the program and do a FLDG equivalent of an Android and iPhone app. That would be fantastic to have. But unfortunately, yeah, a lot of the apps do just one specific thing or very few other modes besides what they are advertised.
Okay, and you said the Robot 36, and it is robot, right? As an R-O-B-O-T.
Yep, Robot 36. It does all slow scan TV modes.
Okay, and it picks the correct mode automatically?
Yep, automatically. That has the auto mode, and you just you don't even need to hook it up. You just put it next to the speaker of your radio, and it's going to just start decoding.
All right, thanks a lot. Appreciate your help. And like I said, great presentation tonight. Thank you.
Thomas Witherspoon, you're next.
Yes, thank you. So are you able to hear me okay?
Yes.
Is this unmuted? Okay. So I don't know that this is necessarily practical all the time, but you know, I've always felt like the people who are really curious about radio and all the really unique properties of all the things we have in our radio enthusiast world, you know, that you can kind of draw them out when you just show them what's going on. And my daughters are homeschooled. They do, and we belong to a secular homeschool co-op here in Nashville. And so the parents teach, courses sometimes. And I've done probably 4 different courses over the course of maybe 4 years where I implemented radio in the curriculum. And the reason I mention it is because a lot of people live in areas with homeschool groups, just like the ones that my kids belong to. And the teachers and parents there love it when they get people who come in and want to talk about a certain topic, especially if it deals with science and technology and engineering and STEMmy type things. But what I did with one class, and it was actually really, really fun, I did a class on soldering, and I found, and I can't remember the name of it now, I found a little radio kit that made an AM radio, a medium wave radio. Really simple. It took us maybe 2 sessions to build it. And after they built it, I did a contest for who could get the furthest DX on it in 1 week. And we built little antennas and stuff. And one of my students got Radio Relo, which is not too bad for this cheap, kit radio, but they actually understood what was going on. And they were like, wow, signals can travel that far. And I really kind of talked to him about how cell phones and Wi-Fi networks and Bluetooth and how they're line of sight and it's really close by, and how this actually just, these things bounce off the ionosphere and they go so much further. And then I actually taught a ham radio course, and I did the same thing. I out of the class, it was seven young women. They're like between 14 and 16, 17. And all of them were licensed by the end of it. I told them at the beginning, you're going to be licensed by the end of this course. And they all did it. And I was really proud of them because there was one girl in that class who, she was the last person in there I would have ever guessed would have liked it. She's someone who, she's all about appearance and, everything, and kind of just super stylish. And I thought, man, she's going to be bored out of her mind. Her mom came up to me after the class and she was like, it's so funny because at the beginning of the course, I was thinking, this is ridiculous. She doesn't really need to take this course. She's not interested in any of this stuff. She's going to be so bored. And she took it and she said she was so excited about this that for Christmas, she wanted an Arduino. And she said, I had to look up what an Arduino was, right? She just really got into it. And and so she was really enthusiastic about getting her license and stuff. And I think sometimes that a lot of it is, and I actually took them outside. We built an antenna. In the same session where we built the antenna, we got on the radio, and I was so lucky that day that the propagation gods were watching, because the very first station was Slovenia that we worked on 20 meters and using my call sign. And, just like that experiential stuff. And Jeff actually kind of brought up a point that I was going to bring up, which was, the maker communities love it when people come in and talk about a specific aspect of, some bit of science or technology. And radio is one of those things that they love. If people come in and maybe talk about radio and what it does and how it works, and maybe how you can build a radio or something. So all those ways are just great ways to get people who are already kind of interested and wired for it, but want to learn more. At least that's what I found out.
Cool.
I have Bill Bonilla with a question. Let me go ahead and unmute Bill. And if you see that,
hear me?
There
Hello? Hello?
You're on.
Oh, beautiful. I am a dinosaur. Can you believe this? I've been a ham forever, SWL forever, and I'm a dinosaur. Couple of things here. First of all, Thomas, I appreciate your SWL site. I read your blog regularly. Couple things there. And Gilles and Sheldon, you brought back fond memories last night. I never knew why the RCI pennants sometimes were blue and sometimes had red writing. I got them for years. I have no idea why they were different colors. I still have unconfirmed RCI QSL cards. I tried to get one confirmed. Now they weren't interested. A couple of things here. You guys had a national treasure up there. I visited Maison de Radio Canada. I went to Sackville before they tore down RCI, the transmitter site. It was absolutely beautiful. It was a great mid-level shortwave broadcaster. And from what I can tell, as a foreigner and not directly involved with it, it looks like they died of 1,000 cuts, that they were, that their budget was cut a little bit at a time over a period of years. I grew up with The World is Six and As It Happens on CB when they would play it on RCI. So I have a lot of fond memories of that. So I just wanted to say thanks to both of you for mentioning that. And like I said, I had no idea why they were red or blue. I still have some of them. So a couple of things there. This is my second festival. I love doing this. I appreciate that there's all the different facets of the hobby. I'm a ham also, but there's so many things you can do, and it's like a smorgasbord, but you won't get fat, and you can eat as much as you want. There's all kinds of different things you can do, and I really appreciate that. And I was a shortwave listener before I was a ham, and the radio hobby probably saved me from juvenile delinquency. I did not go to school in the 8th grade. I did not go to school. I hung out with all the bad kids and smoked on the corner and played hooky and all that stuff. My parents loved me being in front of a radio because they knew what I was doing. So that was a really, I mean that very, very seriously. I think I could have gotten in a lot of trouble. My Elmer got me into the hobby. So I appreciate that. I appreciate the support of Richard from you. Like I said, I had trouble getting on initially. I could get on the phone, but I couldn't get on the computer, but I got that straightened out. And I believe that the recordings are going to be available. You said Monday. I don't know if the links are going to be sent to just us participants or it's going to be on the, okay, fantastic.
Yep.
I appreciate what everyone's doing. I'm looking forward to hearing other people's comments, but again, thank you again for this, and I hope everyone has a great evening. Thank you very much. Thanks for your patience.
Thanks, Bill. Hey, tell you what, and Sheldon and Gilles, maybe I'll appeal to you guys or someone who that likes to edit audio. Maybe there's a way we could take, there's all these hours are going to be available of recording, and maybe there's a way we could, well, I guess, edit them down so that we might be able to put a sample file out there of like maybe an hour of the SWLfest's greatest hits and make that available for the unsuspecting general public to hear what the fest is all about. This is what we do at the fest. And you know, and you know, you don't have to do this tomorrow or Monday or Tuesday even, but maybe that's a way to take advantage of this wonderful content that we have and make it available to someone else. So
great idea. I'd be happy to do it if you want.
You'll be hired.
Yeah, Rich, if I can add something that you know, listening to these comments are so great. I think it hit home with a lot of people, but one warning, I guess, is some of these topics. I've been to 33 Winterfests. This was the 33rd of mine. What we talked about here tonight is not necessarily new, though.
Of course.
We have talked about some of these things in the past, and we got that same sort of enthusiasm from a bunch of people. But you know, we don't have to name any names, but there were some people who, yeah, rah, rah, and it didn't go anywhere. You know, it was great at the time, but it takes some commitment. It takes wanting to do it. So if you really believe what we threw at you, consider this a challenge and get back to us. Let us know the successes that you've had. I forgot to mention one other thing that's important that we're planning on doing. And if you're in clubs, you could do it with your ham clubs or your radio clubs. If you have a Zoom account, I mean, you can use the free one and have 40-minute sessions, but we find that that's usually not enough time. But you know, if you can scrape the funds together and get the account for the year, and you arrange meetings of your club. We've been doing that now for quite a while, but what we're going to do is to go out and search out some people as guests to come in and talk to our people, as you know, like you go to a meeting where there's a guest lecturer. we can now bring those people in from the other side of the world. We can go to a shortwave station maybe and get a broadcaster who will come and talk to our group. We can, there's ways to reach people now that we couldn't really do it before, and we can get that interaction going that way too. So if you're a ham club and you're responsible for getting speakers, spread it out. Like someone said, Rich, you went down and spoke to Saul's group. That sort of thing any of us can do, just talk to the groups, but use the tools that we have. This is a perfect example of what we've done with Zoom here for the last 2 years. And a lot of people have been asking Rich this in the other room where we'll be going shortly, what's going to happen next time. And there's, we're seeing it. There's the group that have been in person to Winterfest who want that to happen again. And there's the people who can never get there who want this to happen again. Yeah. So we're letting everybody know that we're looking at that. We're aware of that. And we're gonna find a way, I'm sure, that we can satisfy both. We can't afford not to.
Yep. Very good. Very good.
Cool.
We had a couple hands pop up here. Let's see. Stephen Kane. Let me unmute you there, Stephen, so you can ask your question or invite you to unmute yourself. There you go. Go ahead, Stephen.
Hey, thanks, gang. I want to thank Sheldon and Gilles. I never heard about the SWLfest, or if I did in passing, I didn't take notice of it. And I tune into Gilles' live YouTube all the time. And we were talking about it, and I saw that the expiration date had passed February 28th. That got fixed. So anyway, I just want to share that I always thought this was a very solitary hobby. I always felt very alone in doing it. As a young child, I would sleep at my grandparents' house, and my grandfather had at the side of his bed Holocrafters S38C with just a wire and a safety pin that put it up onto the casing. And I couldn't believe that I could listen to Radio Moscow as like an 8-year-old child. And when I got the chance to get an S38D, I was like in heaven. And it was a matter of, trying to figure everything out, how I could switch it. Back then, they didn't have like a BFO or a VFO. You tuned on AM, you threw it the band spread on CW, and then kind of tuned through. And I started learning all these things. And I thought, wow, there's really a lot going on here. And I tried to share the information with my friends, and I often would get either ridiculed or laughed at, but I thought, I think I'm kind of ahead of them in a sense, not in a cocky attitude, but just to say, hey, I'm learning a lot more than you folks are listening to your basic AM, FM radio. But anyway, I kind of get away from it for a long time. Now I have a place with the real estate where I can get antennas up and more modern equipment. And again, I thought it was a solitary pursuit. And then I started tuning into the official SWL channel of Gilles and finding that there's a like-minded community. I didn't feel so alone in the hobby. And in some respects, there was a kind of a romanticism in being able to do this on your own and thinking you have knowledge that others don't, but there's that camaraderie. So I just wanted to weigh in and show my very early experience. It did lead me to a career, and I did broadcasting for several years as a reporter, both on air and supplying content to the news station locally. And then I ended up working as a 911 telecommunicator and then a police dispatcher. My scanners and all that stuff were always part of my life. So I want to thank everyone involved, but especially Gilles. His show kind of really rekindled my fascination with SWL. This is my first SWLfest, and I think you guys really, really have it like put together excellent. And I can't wait to a time when I can come down and we all do it in person. So anyway, that's my 40 cents inflation. And that's about it. Thanks, guys.
Thank you, Stephen. And we appreciate the feedback. Tom Swisher, you're out there. Unmute yourself and ask away.
Well, first, kind of a salute to Stephen Kane from another former public safety dispatcher. 23 years behind the mic. And then I went into the administration side and I'm still there. Well, actually I moved on, I retired and then moved on to emergency management. So I just can't stay out. But anyway, I've been kind of in and out monitoring. I've been kind of fussing around the shack here, fooling around with stuff. Including mounting that MLA 30 on the window. And by golly, if it doesn't seem to be working. So that's a good thing. But I'll have to keep fussing around with it, see if I can make it better. But anyway, I wanted to echo some of the comments I heard about the continuing the Zoom capability. That this has been really fantastic because there've been, I mean, I love the getting together in Plymouth meeting. That's really fantastic. Being able to see everybody and shoot the breeze and in person and so on. But the Zoom capability for bringing more people to the fest who can't physically attend, I think is great. And I think some kind of a hybrid arrangement the next time we get together should definitely be considered. Just because it's such a great way to get more participation and more input from a lot of people. I mean, I'm seeing folks here and hearing comments from folks I've never seen before and actually heard some new things. And that's great. And, you know, how many of those folks would we not have heard from had we not had the Zoom capability? So I think it's a fantastic idea and I really hope to see it continue. And that's about it. That's my 37 cents.
Excellent, excellent, excellent thoughts. Alrighty, we have a hand up from Albert Friedland. Albert, go ahead and unmute yourself and speak.
Oh, I meant to put my hand down. Let me do that. I am a Jewish atheist, and there's a precept in Judaism that requires all of us to be teachers in some sense. So I'm really thrilled to hear that Larry speaks in libraries and other venues in my other hobby of astronomy, and that Sheldon does likewise with conservation and ornithology in schools. But Sheldon, I just wanted to ask you, you said we should apprise you of any potential candidates for your list, but you didn't say how. How can we get in touch with you if we are unfortunate enough to hear of someone for you?
Oh boy, I've got your email. I'll send you an email. Then you'll have my contact info. You can email me back whenever. That's the easiest way to do it.
Thanks.
All right.
I still have a hand up. Dave Marthouse, are you out there? I've left your hand up. Can you unmute, Dave? Let me go ahead.
Can you hear me?
There we go.
Oh, for some reason I wouldn't unmute before. First of all, props to Gilles and Sheldon. I think you guys are right on. And I'm involved with kind of a parallel movement here. I'm a ham as well, as you can see by my name tag there. I'm a member of the Fair Lawn, New Jersey Amateur Radio Club, and we're the largest club in New Jersey, about 180 members now. And we have recently instituted several special interest groups within the club. One is a monitoring group, which has got about 30 people in it already, just mostly local folks, but anyone who is involved in the monitoring hobby. You don't have to be a ham and you don't have to be a member of the club to join. It's free. We're on Groups.io. And you can look at our webpage at fairlawnarc.net, fairlawnarc.net. And we've got a vibrant group of monitors as well. In fact, I've did some stuff for them. We have 5 years of YouTube videos on all sorts of topics in the amateur radio and monitoring hobby. I've done my Sounds of Space talk that I gave for Winterfest about 5-6 years ago, and that's on YouTube, what I did for the club, and also some other things. We've got upcoming guest speakers for the monitoring side of the house and so on. And those people who want to join yet another monitoring group can check things out on Groups.io. So I wanted to make a shameless plug for that. And great on behalf of, I'd like to give props, of course, to John and Rich, another fantastic fest. And I will, of course, be back for 2023. Hopefully it'll be in person as well. I'm for hybridization of the in-person and Zoom approach because it involves the best of both worlds. And through Zoom, we could bring in guests from anywhere on the planet. Also, getting back to the FLARC thing, we do a series of what's called coffee talks every month on all sorts of topics, including monitoring topics. So check out the Fair Lawn Amateur Radio Club YouTube channel, FLARC, Fair Lawn Amateur Radio Club on YouTube. So we're evangelizing as well. End of babble for me. Back to net.
Thanks, Dave. Thanks. Dave.
There's a marketer for you.
Indeed. Radio veteran for sure. Anyway, I have nobody in the queue at this point. Anybody else want to share their 2 cents? If I'm going to go on the count of 3, I'm going to, yes, sir, Sheldon.
Okay, it's your turn, Richard. To you and to John, particularly you, Richard, you've been putting in, you're one of the working stiffs out there doing some important work too. And you've made time to make all of this happen and get all the confirmations out to people and pull all the right strings and press all the buttons that needed to be done. If you and Rich, you and John had not picked this up from the gang of 3 way back when, none of us would be here right now. So we thank you and John and whoever else is behind the scenes there. We talked earlier about a big word that's got only 2 letters in it, we. Mm-hmm. And it's easy for people to say, we need to do this, we need to do that, and what have you. But sometimes we comes down to being I, and we can't rely on that all the time. So I'm sure Richard will, he's already jumped on Gilles, but Gilles doing an awful lot already, and Gilles, don't bite off too much more than you can chew. So if there are people out there that want to help Richard and John and whoever else can pull this together, step forward and get in touch with them and let them know. So thank you to you guys. And Rich, you want to wrap things up here officially, and then we're going to go over to the after show. And this conversation and any other conversation can continue over there. And we went till way past 1 o'clock in the morning last night. It might even go longer tonight, I have a feel, because somewhere between here and the Mexican border is Pancho Villa on his ride. And he's going to show up in numerous places, we've been told tonight, if one were to know these things.
Through Zoom, maybe, it's a possibility. All right, tell you what, I've got Fred out there with a hand up, and I'm going to close it out just so we can all hop on over to the hospitality room for a beer or 3. Fred, go ahead. Let me unmute you. All righty, Fred.
Yeah, thanks. And we can pick this conversation up in the next room if you like. But I've just done a quick sketch of what I think would be a workable means to hybridize this event into a live and Zoom kind of media streams. We have most of the stuff and certainly all of the talent that we need technically to do that. And I'm just wondering if internet access in the venue would be the gating factor. I'm kind of curious to pick the conversation up as to what people might think are the technical challenges in hybridizing the event. And certainly I've got some gear, and I'm sure others do too, that we can use to make this happen. So
I'll answer that question real quick, Fred, because I'm thirsty. But if we were to go back to the DoubleTree, their in Plymouth meeting, we do get a hardwired internet connection there in the forum room. At least historically they have, and so that has been solid when we've used it. in part because it's not like we're splitting that connection up amongst a bunch of different bandwidth users. So the internet connectivity part, that's one of the easier things to solve. And obviously, whether we do it at the DoubleTree or anywhere, we would want a facility that can provide enough bandwidth and stability to that bandwidth so we could pull it off.
Okay.
So, put you on the list for the brainstormers of how to make this happen.
Yeah, I'd be really amenable to doing that. Thank you. Yeah, please.
Very good. Let me stop the recording because I can. And this